Hi, Lunga.
Hi, Katrina. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for talking to me today about your studio practice.
Well, thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
When are you most productive?
I think I'm most productive just during the day, morning and during the day, depending on what I'm doing. Because practical stuff and not like drawing and just jotting down ideas that I could probably do in the evening and maybe just sketching a few things. So I'm most productive during the day. I think because of the situation, the pandemic, and all of that, we have a limited time in uni. So I use the time that we're allowed to be there. But even if I'm not in uni, I think it's best when I work in the morning and during the day.
What are and how important are the tools that you use in your art practice?
Obviously, I always have a pencil, an eraser, a ruler, the general things. But I think it depends as to where I am, whatever the situation is, and just to try and use what's available. They're important in a way that if they weren't there, I probably wouldn't be able to be as creative or as free as I'd like to be, because sometimes I rarely work with pens. But when I try and use pens, I'm like, okay, let's explore and try new things. So they are important, but I don't think they hold a sentimental value yet. It's just, exploring and having fun time with the tools that I use. So yeah, it's just whatever that's available. And then I just have to think as to how can I use this now?
Okay, these are just some of my tools that I use to create my work, some paints, just the general stuff, paints. And in here, I've got some pins. Lately, I've been using a lot of push pins and all of these stuff. And then in here, just a few more. Some masking tapes, scissors, and always a little sweetie, some sugar a bit here and there, not too much. Yeah, so these are just the basics and many more.
Why did you want to do the MFA course?
Firstly, is I wanted to further my studies and to just kind of see what is it that's there, and not in the same institution, because my lecturers where I did my BA, I asked them if I want to pursue like a master's, just further on. Another one was like, you know what, it's probably best you go to a different institution. I was like, okay, maybe. Then I was like, now I have to think where I would go. So doing the MFA there at Ulster has just been different, yes, challenging, but a good different, not a bad different. So many things have happened that I don't think I would be where I am if I hadn't come so far. So maybe that's why I thought, you know what, if you're doing an MFA, I'm growing. I wanted to grow as an artist.
What does your studio mean to you?
Because now I'm at home, this table, the dining room table has seen it. It has seen it. It knows a lot. So this is the best spot I chose, because yes, I do work in the garage, but up on the floor, I use the floor. But the dining room table has just been the workspace. So not being in studio. But now like the studio in the MFA, it's great. It's a lovely space. And a studio becomes like your second home or third home or whatever. So you need to make it as comfortable as possible for yourself, because if you're not and you don't like it, your work is probably going to reflect how you're feeling even in the studio. So
What has remained constant in your practice despite the pandemic?
sources. Some sources have remained, like going back to the same sources. Yes, of course, I get inspired and you get suggestions to look at this source. But sometimes there's that artist or a certain something that you constantly go back to and you revisit it just in case you kind of wonder, what can I do next? So I think that for me, sources, the artists I've looked at, patterns have remained, but not the same ways. My process has remained the same. Throughout, I've realized that there's no change in the process, it's just you've added things to the process.
What have you learned while pursuing the MFA course?
My current work right now is, or what I'm doing it. I've never done what I'm currently doing. And for a moment, I was uncertain and scared of approaching something so different because, you want to constantly look at something familiar. So the MFA has and continues to be challenging. I would say I want to challenge myself. And then when the challenge comes, you're like, I don't want to, this challenge is too much. It's too much. But then because it started being challenging and, being challenged by others, you want to challenge yourself. So I'm learning. Now I feel like I'm learning something. Really, I'm receiving from the MFA what I've probably been longing for, but was unconsciously unaware that this is what you need. The growth is now like, okay, this is the beginning of the growth. So, yes, that's what I've learned. It's weird because it's happening my second year, but never too late. It's never too late. It's the time. This is the time.
Who is your work made for?
It's made for me. I think it's also made for everyone. I want my work not to just be viewed by a certain audience. It's good to have like one audience that views your work because then you have viewers, and like anyone not looking at your work at all. But before, I probably didn't, that wasn't as important, but now I realize the direction the work is going now, I prefer it to be like the audience to be everyone and everything, not to be restricted as to, okay, these are the people. So if everyone responds to it, anyone, if a baby is like, oh, this or whatever, then you are the audience. I don't think you can really say, once your work is made public, something that is public you can't dictate and say, it's not for you. Everyone sees it now, unless you keep it in your house. Then it's for the people who come into your house. But once you make it public, it's for the public. I think it's for everyone. I've never really said, okay, I want it to be looked at like this. For me, I feel like I want it to be for everyone and everything.
Do you have any advice for art students in general or future MFA students?
Oh, breathe. Breathe. Take time. Be in the moment. Be present, because be mentally and physically present. When you need help, ask. Don't be quiet and suffer alone, even if you don't understand. Even if it's something you know, but you're hesitant, ask someone who probably knows it better. Even ask for advice, even when you don't need advice. Just because sometimes when I just call you and say, can you please come and see this? Maybe you see something that I didn't initially see in my work. So ask around and don't isolate yourself. I know we're in a pandemic and it's like, isolate. But for this, I don't think any MFA student should just be alone, because I don't think you'd be able to grow when you're alone like that. For your work, your art practice to grow. There are certain things where you need to be alone to grow, but I've seen with me, I'm growing because of my fellow classmates, what they are giving to me and what I'm giving to them, our lecturers. Yes, just ask. Don't sit around and be lonely. Do your research and remain to be you and just be true to yourself and let your art speak to you and you speak to your art. And yes, as well, be in the studio as much as possible. Use the studio. Use the studio. Use the resources. Oh my goodness. Use everything that is available to you. They say you can use that, use it. Use it.